over. The United States of America, after a short reprieve during the COVID-19 pandemic, eviction filings by landlords have, well, they're roaring back, some at record levels, driven by rising rent prices, okay? Rising rent prices, a shortage of affordable housing plays into that, and loosened tenant protections. Now, together with those factors, you are creating a significant barrier to the progress of working class individuals. They are put in difficult situations, people who are poor, even worse, okay? Now, for those who are facing things like this, society has a way of looking at it and saying, you failed. Could not be further from the truth. That is not a failure. That is not a personal failure, it's a policy failure. Anytime we're dealing with systemic homelessness, evictions, all of that aligns to a policy failure and not a personal failure. They would love for you to think it's a personal failure so that you do not hold them accountable to give you the proper policy to correct it. All right, eviction filings are more than 50% higher than the pre-pandemic average in some cities. According to the Eviction Lab, which tracks filings in nearly 36 cities and 10 states, landlords file around 3.6 million eviction cases every single year. Among the hardest hit are Houston, where rates are 56% higher in April and 50% higher in May. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, rates rose 106% in March, 55% in April, 63% in May. Nashville was 35% higher. Phoenix, 33% higher in May. The latest data mirrors trends that started last year, with the Eviction Lab finding nearly 970,000 evictions filed in locations it tracks. 78.6% increase compared to 2021, when much of the country was following an eviction moratorium. By December, eviction filings were nearly back to pre-pandemic levels. As mentioned, part of the driving force behind increased evictions, rising rental prices. So rent prices nationwide are up at about 5% from a year ago, and 30.5% above 2019. The problem, nobody's making 30% more money since 2019. That's according to the real estate company Zillow. There are a few places for displaced tenants to go, with the National Low Income Housing Coalition estimating a $7.3 million shortfall, 7.3 million shortfall of affordable units, nationwide. So you have a logistical issue just with the available opportunities for affordable housing. The low income tenants can't count on pandemic resources that kept them housed, all right? Once again, that's a policy issue, right? And many have not found steady work, another policy issue. Their wages have not kept up with the cost of affording somewhere to live, another policy issue. What do you think you pay taxes for? Why do you think we pay taxes in this country? It's to pay politicians to figure out stuff. And if they haven't figured it out, that means that they're failing, not you. They are. There's more. In upstate New York, evictions are rising after moratorium lifted last year. 40 of the state's 62 counties had higher eviction filings in 2022 than before the pandemic, including 2 where eviction filings more than doubled compared to 2019. In Texas, evictions were kept down during the pandemic by federal assistance and the moratoriums. But as protections went away, housing prices skyrocketed in Austin, Dallas, and elsewhere, leading to a record 270,000 eviction filings statewide in 2022. These are people. These are not numbers, these are people. Daniel Grubbs Donovan, a research specialist at Princeton University's Eviction Lab says, and I quote, protections have ended. The federal moratorium is obviously over. And emergency rental assistance money has dried up in most places. Across the country, low-income renters are in an even worse situation than before the pandemic due to things like massive increases in rent during the pandemic, inflation, and other pandemic era related financial difficulties. So naturally, homelessness is rising because of this. So let's talk about it from an actual perspective that grants insight and perhaps